Normally when I do a bullet journal flip through video, it is just the one journal, but for this one we're actually flipping through the entire of 2022. That is 3 fully packed journals and one that only has a few pages in it, but let's have a look at those ones. The first journal that I set up for the year was this A5 from Archer & Olive, and I didn't use very many pages in this one because this is what I call my yearly collections journal. In knowing that I was going to have multiple journals that I was using on a kind of everyday basis throughout the year, I had certain collections that I didn't want to have to set up time and time again. So those kind of things go into this notebook. The first page was just a welcome to the new year, so hello 2022. We have my word of the year and my 2 goals that I was working on. And the idea for these guys here was to have a picture of myself on January 1st and then a picture of myself on December 31st. I haven't taken this picture yet, it's actually only the 19th when I'm recording this. And that one I do have, I just haven't printed it off yet. After this one though, we had a page for my word of the year, and for my word of the year I always like to put in the word. I put in a dictionary definition, and then just some journaling about why I picked that word. So mine was very much about the idea of letting myself hold myself back, and that idea of knowing what I want to do, so I just need to go out and do it. I just didn't want the Nike slogan as my word of the year, so I picked jump. This page here was a summary of my goals, so I had 2 main goals that I was working on for the year, in theory. But then, if we turn the page, I never actually ended up planning them out in this notebook. I did stuff on scrap paper, I did stuff in my brainstorming book, but didn't actually use these ones. So when it came to setting up my layouts for 2023, I didn't include this one. After this one though, we have my 101 things list. So this is 101 things to do in the year. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them didn't get done, which is totally fine. I don't really push myself to get my 101 things done, but it effectively acts as like a record of achievement or kind of milestones or kind of nice memories, I suppose. Really depends on what the entries are. That one is certainly a list that I have carried forward to next year though, because I really do enjoy it. After this, we have my 22 22s in 2022, so 22 things that I wanted to do 22 times. For this, I like to have the graphical representation so I can visually see how many things I've gotten done, but then for certain of these tasks, I like to have a kind of description of what they were. So for instance, movies, which movies did I watch? Documentaries, which documentaries did I watch? I didn't actually include a space to record all of these things though, and that was something that bothered me. So in setting up my pages for 2023, I did make sure to have a space for everything, even if it's just a small space to write something like the date, for instance. So for instance, like for no food out, I didn't have to record, I don't know, very much detail about that. It was more just like, which date did I not have food out on? 2 liters of water, yeah, wah wah. Flipping over, we have my weight tracker, and you can see I was using it fairly okay on a semi-consistent basis. We got to about September, August though, and I just stopped tracking it. I might put in a dot for the end of the year so I can see where it kind of ended up, but I don't know. I just don't think I really care to track it, if I'm honest, and thus I haven't included a weight tracker in my new bullet journal setup. This here was my kind of challenge of the year, so it was my no fast food challenge. In part for health reasons, in part for financial reasons, just because it's really expensive, honestly. I had a little flip out key here so that I could kind of, see the items underneath it, but then also had a little reference. Anything that was in black was a day that I just didn't record. And you can see I haven't recorded since the 23rd of October. Actually remembering to come back and check in on this one was a bit of a struggle. We had our reading challenge, and by that I mean the J&R Book Club, which we had a read for each of these different genres throughout the year, it was a nice challenge because it was the first year we kind of did the book club properly, so that was cool. After this, we have my monthly challenge reference. So it's effectively just a place that I've written out what each of my monthly challenges were for the year. Something that I was very pleased with regards to my monthly challenges is that in previous years, if I had a month that didn't have a challenge, I kind of just let that derail me completely. But in this year, I decided, no, just if you don't have a challenge, you can just write down no challenge, but we'll pick it back up the next month. We had a space for my reset checklists, so my kind of weekly reset checklist, and this one was supposed to be my monthly, but I never actually got around to filling it in. And then we have the then and now page, which I'm now calling then and again. But the idea behind this one is that you answer these prompts that you've put in the middle on the first day of using the journal and the last. Now, my yearly collections journal isn't a kind of one journal a year type deal. It does get used year upon year. So I just decided to make that time frame for the year. So 1st of Jan, 31st of December. In this envelope, we have a letter to myself, which is for me to read on the 1st of January 2023. And then this space was intended for notes, but I didn't actually end up using it. The idea, I think, was to write down notes about which layouts I might want to include in this journal for 2023. As mentioned, I don't use the full journal for the whole year, so after this we actually get into my 2023 pages, but that's not what we're here for. We're doing a 2022 flip through. Having these collections sectioned off into their own notebook, though, was super helpful for not having to set them up with each of my new everyday journals. Otherwise, I would have had to have like 3 editions of the 101 things list and 3 editions of my no fast food tracker. I think even if you just consider the 101 things list itself, having to write out 101 things 3 times over, it's not the business. So getting to write it once by putting it in my yearly collections journal was much more favourable. Getting into my everyday bullet journals though, for the first third of 2022, I was using this A5 from Archer and Olive, which is such a pretty colour. But if we flip on into that one, on the inside cover, I pretty much always like to put my teaching timetable. It's just a really handy place to have it as a reference. Of course, not teaching anymore, so I don't include it so much anymore, but nameplate page. For this start of journal setup, we were going for a very kind of like simple, minimalistic kind of setup. Mainly because I'd done a bit more of a decorative setup in my yearly collections journal. The idea for this page is that it was going to be a moments page, as you can tell from the header, but effectively like a memory keeping space. But I didn't turn back and actually fill it in. I did fill it in for January, just not for the rest of the months. In terms of our future log, I really like the design of this. I actually think it's really pretty. This lettering style in particular was a fun challenge, but also just really gorgeous, so I ended up using it again in my start of journal setup for 2023. Me and the future log have an interesting relationship though, so you can see for January through to, I don't know, May-ish, I did actually kind of use it, but then beyond that I didn't really have a lot to fill in, so did not get used after that so much. For our level 10 life, we have each of the different categories down the side here, and then the little gold dots here represent what my rating was at the time of filling this in. The black circle for each of them is what I rated it last time I did my rating, and then I just had some journaling underneath this to kind of describe why I gave it that rating. This one was intended on being a quarterly goal plan, so it's like, for this quarter, quote quote, what are we going to be doing? I mean, you technically have more than a quarter's worth of space here, because I also included a space for April, mainly because I wasn't too sure how many months were going to fit in this journal. I think in my head I was planning on it only being a quarter, but it ended up being able to fit April in as well, so I just kept using it. After this we have the meal planner spread, along with this like favourite meal section. This part down the bottom here was intended for a sticky note, for like a grocery list kind of thing. I do like the idea of it, but the issue came in that these boxes aren't sized to any of the sticky notes I actually have, so I had to trim things down to put them in the boxes, which didn't really work out. I have a vague recollection of filling in these favourite meals like 2 days before I finished using this journal, just because I didn't have anything written there. Our next page is a check this out section, and I can say I did check out Avalanche at home bubble tea. We have my someday maybe section, which I now call future me problems, and then we have a place to write out the my next journal stuff. So what kind of things did I want to include in my next journal, and some little thumbnails down here to say what was going in what order, and a little colour swatch, which is kind of cute. These pages here I use for planning out my journal themes. So each month I like to specify what my colour palette's going to be, like obviously what the theme is, general aesthetic notes or like decorative notes, the spreads that I want to use, and then the font or lettering style that I want to use. I find these quite helpful before I actually get into doing my setup, especially the spreads list, so that I can kind of tick things off as I go to make sure I include everything that I want to. After this one though, we got into my teacher planning stuff. So as you can see, this is for term 1, 2022, and this page does look blank, but originally there was a year at a glance here. We'll see that one in a future journal because I made it a removable year at a glance so that I didn't have to write it out multiple times. I gave myself an important date section, I didn't actually use it. We have the topic timeline section, which I think these timelines were roughly on par with what they were supposed to be, but they probably got a little bit, Year 7 science in particular, I know got fudged around a bit, but that's okay. So after this we have a term overview, which although I did not fill very much in, I still stand by the idea of having a term overview. I think that they can be very helpful. And then after this one, we're into each of the weekly plans. So because I knew that this journal wasn't going to be lasting me 6 months, it was going to be lasting me less time, it meant that I had more pages to play around with for this kind of thing. So I decided to go for a week per spread for term 1. So week 1, got these little kind of waterfall tabs down the side in a rainbow order because I wanted all of these pages to be bright and fun, I guess to kind of like, get me excited about the new school year or something like that. I think that these turned out really well. I think I lined them up pretty well. And, this week I obviously changed colors because I think I didn't have my pens on me, but I really needed to set it up or something. Week 5, I didn't necessarily use all of the space that I had here, but I didn't mind having it for some weeks. Made a mistake there, that's okay. Week 7, I also liked using this kind of combination of the lowercase and all caps lettering for all of the headers. This is the kind of lettering style that I like to use in my long-term collections journal as well. Week 9, 10, and 11. So you can see varied use through that. In terms of the notes section, I pretty much never used the notes section because if I had any notes, they'd go on my actual weekly spreads. We had a before term 1 checklist, which did get used, which makes sense because it was kind of the start of the life of the journal, so I was a bit more motivated to do stuff. Did not use the before term 2 space. Did have a space to record SAC requests or like special assessment conditions. And then we're into January. Now the theme for January, may surprise you, was not buffalo plaid, but it kind of ended up that way, I feel. It was actually a mountain kind of theme, but I loved this setup. I loved this lettering style, and I loved the combination of the black and the red and the like kind of simple doodles or decoration. So we have our quote page. The first step towards getting somewhere is to decide you're not going to stay where you are. Love this lettering style. January cover page though, and then we have the monthly log. I liked these little, I don't think you can even call them pine. I think they're kind of semi supposed to resemble pine, but it was just really simple but pretty decoration. I appreciated that. It's just a nice setup. The monthly challenge, I had a tracker for this one in any month that I actually kind of decided on a monthly challenge. And the monthly challenge for January was to exercise for 20 minutes every day. And I just filled in this little buffalo plaid in different colors depending on what I did. I tried yoga for one day and decided I didn't like it and then just never did it again. This was my action steps list. We have a section for the one-off tasks, the weekly tasks, and the daily tasks. The thing about this though is that I didn't fill it in, I think, before the month started, so I kind of just like panic filled in a couple of things, but filling it in earlier does mean that I use it more typically. My meal log, which I like this style of meal log. I find it very easy to use, and it's actually kind of cool that it seems I filled it in almost completely. I don't know if I just didn't snack on these days, but actually filling it in. Good job past me. We have the monthly reflection, and you can see some of the sections got used and some of them did not. I love monthly reflections as well. These have kind of tweaked or changed a little bit as I've gone through the life of this journal and the future ones. And then we have the first 2 days of the month. Because I like to use weekly logs and I still wanted to have the 1st and 2nd of January, I just decided to put them on a page by themselves. And then I also had a tracker for our book club book. I had a space for thoughts, but I did not fill it in. That's okay. After this, we have the actual first full weekly of January, which we have a little Dutch door moment going on here, which I thought was pretty cute. The buffalo plaid is so beautiful. Gave myself a little 2 lines a day section. We've got a little space for each of my daily checklists. And we've got just some general to-dos to fill in this back page. And you can see some of these were probably just a brain dump for the next week, given the fact that they got migrated over. Onto the next page. This one isn't a weekly, as you can see. It says 30 days to better habits. This was actually a challenge that James Clear put out, I think. And there were emails every so often, like not every day because there were only 11 lessons, but every couple of days there was an email, and I just wanted to take those notes down here because I thought they would be valuable to have. We have the next weekly. So we've still got the habit tracker section, we've got the daily boxes. Didn't actually end up putting the buffalo plaid on this one, but I did just stick in the red piece of paper. And I don't think I set up Sunday. Obviously didn't have a lot to do on the Sunday, or just didn't write it down. This week, I think we were possibly getting back to school very soon, if not actually at school. I think this is the week before we went back to school, but I didn't put any decoration on this one. But I did put decoration on the next one. Okay, yep, so let's see. We have science mark books, timetable marking, yep. Yeah, I think that this is when we probably went back to school. And thus I was like, oh, end of holiday, burnout. I don't want to set anything up in my planner. I don't know, I was probably just too busy to write stuff in, which happens a lot. And then we are in to February, which is quite a change in colour palette, a lot more vibrant. So for this month, we were going with a kind of sunset sky theme, where I used lines of colour to kind of give this gradient effect in the background, and then put these kind of black silhouettes along the bottom here. Our quote for the month was, "Don't wait, the time will never be just right." A lot of the time when I'm picking my quotes, it's very much related to, I don't know, some kind of internal struggle that I'm having, or some thoughts and feels that I need to kind of process. So for this month and the last one, it was very much the idea of like conflicted feelings about, do I quit teaching, you know, when do I quit teaching, that kind of stuff. But moving on to our monthly log, I very much liked the bright colours. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really wish I had a better transition between the pink and the purple, because this kind of section doesn't really look quite right to me, but anything from like that line down, I really like that part. I really liked the silhouette as well at the bottom, that was really cool. But what I didn't like is how long it took to actually put these coloured lines in, because to get that really crisp edge, I had to do a lot of like masking of the page with washi tape and then colour sections in, and it was time consuming, but I do like it. My monthly challenge for this month was around sleep routines. So around getting up at the same time each day and going to bed at the same time each day. But you can see I didn't really track that because it was February and we were really getting into, you know, the start of school stuff, and it wasn't necessarily a good choice for the first term. It's still something that I would like to challenge myself to improve, but it wasn't the right choice for this point in time. We have the actions list, which I think I made a little bit better use of in terms of the weekly and daily action sections. And then after this we have my meal log. I decided to change the style of it, and I'm not really too sure why. I think possibly in part it was the idea of like, oh, I've got so many pages, like I can do a different style that uses up more space. But I don't need 4 lines to write out what I had for breakfast or lunch or even dinner really. Maybe 4 lines for snacks on particular days, but it wasn't super necessary. But I use the Dutch door here again, as you can see. So we've got the little tabs, the little like black paper. Did I stick the black paper in? No, I must have coloured this in because there's no ridge. So that was just coloured in with a Tombow or something like that. But it meant that I only had to do this back panel decoration and this one here once, which is just a little bit easier rather than colouring it in on every single page. On this page, I was trying to map out some weekly routines so that I could kind of get a feel for what I would be doing when, in terms of balancing my teaching stuff and my content creating stuff. Didn't necessarily fill it in and thus didn't necessarily refer to it. Our book club book was Mexican Gothic, so I gave myself a little track of that. Again, I put in a notes section, but I did not use it because I don't really like to record notes about my fiction reads. Non-fiction, yes, but not my fiction reads. This was just a quick weekly that I set up because I think I was just feeling a little bit, I don't even know, in a couldn't be bothered kind of attitude with doing the gradient stuff, but it didn't sit well with me that it absolutely did not match the rest of the monthly, so in subsequent weeks I did put in some decoration. So on this one we've got a little Dutch door happening. This was also the month that we were doing a live stream every single day, which was a bit of a fun challenge, honestly. It got me a lot more comfortable with live video because that's not something I'm particularly comfortable with. Ooh, okay, this is when Wordle really started to get big. So I was playing through the Wordle archive. That's why we've got from like number 1 up to 232. Oh no, still going because I Dutch doored this one. Up to 348. But around, I don't even know what point, they got rid of the Wordle archive, which meant that I couldn't play back these ones or any of the ones that I missed in here, so I was like, well, stuff it, I'm not going to play anymore. You ruined it for me. But we have a little key up here regarding whether I failed the Wordle, so that would be written in red, and then like how many guesses that I used and stuff like that. That was a bit of fun too. For this weekly, I decided I didn't want to do the kind of panels of colour like on this side. I only used it on this side. So we have a little folded Dutch door, but I do remember not liking this lettering, mainly because in the monthly pages, if we flip back for a second, all of the lettering was done on blackout paper with a white pen. I think that's an acrylograph. So this just didn't feel like it kind of matched the overall aesthetic that I was going for in the month. Even though we had the panel down the side, it just didn't seem like it really fit. So for this one, I decided to do a simple kind of cursive because I didn't like the all caps, so I thought maybe if I do cursive it'll be better. I still kind of wish I had have just done the, blackout paper with the white writing, but it's all good. And then we have the February review, which I did not really fill in. I filled in the part about the book club, wrote some memories down, media consumed, but didn't do any of this, so that's okay. It's all good. And then we're into March, which had such a beautiful theme. This one was like a letters or like letters and envelopes kind of theme. I also used a lot of paper planes just because I thought that was a cute like addition to the theme as well. So we've got some washi tape in the corners and stuff, and we had a really pretty color palette. In terms of our quote for the month, it was "All big things come from small beginnings," from James Clear. I like James Clear quotes quite a bit, so I use them a fair bit in my journal. So too much from February. We're going into the monthly log. I did this monthly log across the entire spread, so we've got, Thursday in the middle of the spread? So those boxes go across both pages. But I liked in this one in particular the idea of using the different colors. So like each diagonal you can probably see has a set color. So the pale blue and then the gray and the pink, etc. But then each of the actual boxes themselves were a little bit different. So we've got like a full colored box, or we've got ones with just the corners, or the ones with like the dotted outside edge. I really loved this theme. I loved the decoration. I just thought it was really pretty. And it was also fun getting to kind of challenge myself. Challenge myself in terms of lettering, because this style of lettering is something that I have been slowly building up more this year. I think I'm getting better at it very slowly. Yet again, did not fill in my actions list before the month started, which is just a bad idea. And I had to learn that lesson repeatedly this year, but it's actually starting to stick now. The monthly challenge itself, the idea for this one was that all of the little, wax seal kind of circles on the back of the envelopes, they were all empty to start with. So I was going to colour them in based on whether I had or hadn't completed the challenge, but then I didn't pick the challenge, so they're all coloured in to say the challenge was not done. Or I guess you could say is done, considering the challenge was to not challenge myself. I also decided in this month to use a productivity tracker with the little key in the middle. I absolutely love productivity trackers, one, because of how they end up looking. I just love the visual kind of aspect of it, but it's effectively, two, a record of achievement. I find that a lot of the time I get to the end of the day and I'm thinking to myself, what did you even accomplish today? Like, what actually happened? Did you get anything done? And the productivity tracker helps me to remember that just because it wasn't on the to-do list, or just because we don't have a lot checked off from the to-do list, doesn't mean we weren't doing things. I do have a separate video on that one, but I do like the productivity tracker a lot, even if I didn't quite finish it off. We have the meal log, which also didn't really get finished off, but I do still like that layout. And then after this we have the March reflection, which I think I was a little bit better about actually filling in. So you can see, yep, for my monthly challenge, 0 of 31 days did the challenge get accomplished. I didn't actually fill in any accomplishments. I'm sure there were accomplishments in March, but I didn't write anything down. We have challenges, memories though, thoughts and feelings, my ratings for each week in terms of my 2 goals, and then my media consumed section, but it was very cute. And then each of the weeklies in this month, I believe, were the same, just with a slight change in the colors. So habits, projects, each of the days for events, and then a running task list with the Alistair method so I could see when things were getting done. Tiny Dutch door so that I didn't have to do the decorative panel twice, and then more space for that task list. Didn't use this page here, but still gave myself plenty of room. After this, we have the next one, similar idea again, just a change of colors. So habits, events, projects, yada yada yada. Flipping that one over. Again, didn't really use this page, but again, that's okay. I gave myself the space there if I needed it. I'm pretty sure there were one of these weeks that I actually used it. It wasn't this one though. Probably didn't need to do the Dutch door on this one, but it's all good. Didn't end up putting the decorative panel either, and I didn't do the decorative panel on the next one, it seems. But I did use a good chunk of the space for my task list. After this though, I guess we're into April. April was another one that had a theme that I super loved. I loved the combination of the grey, the blue, and the yellow. Like, it's just super pretty. This page though, I decided not to do a quote and instead to have a thoughts and ideas page, not that I really used it. I do find that as I get towards the end of a journal, I kind of slow down in terms of my use because I usually just get excited about my next one, which, you know, it's like a semi-problem. Like, I'm pleased that I'm excited about the new one, but it's a bummer that I don't necessarily kind of finish strong in the one I'm currently working on. We did something different for the monthly log though, so we've got just a mini calendar and then space to write out what was happening on each day. I know this style does not work as well for me, but it was fun trying something new. We then have my actions list, so monthly, weekly, and daily, which I did actually fill in better, but I did not necessarily populate the completion of the things better, if that makes sense. It's still cute though. We then have the monthly memories page, which I thought was a fun addition, even though I didn't actually fill in a lot of the memories. Like, there's a box for each day of the month, I just did not actually come by and fill it in. But I've got a couple good memories here, which is all good. So at least there's something to look back on. We have my habit tracker, which previously for this year, I was tracking my habits on a weekly basis. But I thought it would be cool to go back and try the vertical style, which has worked well previously. I don't think it worked as well this month as I have had it work in previous years, if that kind of makes sense. We have the monthly challenge, which I believe was something like self-care journaling or something like that. Oh, like literally I wrote it right here. So writing at least one self-compassion statement daily. And I need to feel my feelings more. I gave myself a little kind of description as to why I picked that challenge. And then also a space to write down some challenge ideas for future challenges. For this one, it's just if I colored it in, it means that it was done for that day. April reflection, which again, I like this style. I think it's very cute. I just didn't really fill it in, which is a bit of a bummer because I also find that looking back on the reflection pages to be very useful, so it's a shame that I didn't fill these in. It's okay. All of the weeklies in April though were the same, so the same kind of structure. For this one we have the meal plan section on the side here, and that's just a meal plan in terms of dinners. We have a task list for the week, and then we have a section for each day of the week. The idea was that I could use these spaces for notes, but I don't believe I actually ever did. And then they just kind of move around, but it's effectively the same structure. So it's just moving those two grey boxes into the corners, one on the side, one in the corner. Yeah. And this is when I was in Melbourne as well, because it's like getting hand rolls and going for dinner and stuff like that. Yeah. Hung out with mum and dad, so that's probably also why we don't have a lot of population of tasks and stuff on these layouts, because I was not home. Then we've got the last week in April, and then after this we have our back of journal stuff. So one of those was just brainstorming, brain dumping kind of thing. So my like packing list, things to do before Melbourne, that kind of stuff. We then had information to transfer. So I guess this was a list that I was going to try and bring into my next journal. Ideas for the month of planning series, which I believe we did in May, I think is when that happened. Yeah, it would have been May. Excellent. Little timetable for myself for the first week of term 2, so I knew what was going on. Some more notes and tasks, piece of washi tape that I stuck in my journal, and then the last page in the notebook being this kind of scribble page. The A5 notebook though is my tried and true size, so I was very comfortable working in this journal, but one of the things that I wanted to do for 2022 was change things up, try new things, and thus my next journal was my very first B5. This one is also from Archer and Olive and started off this kind of weird chain of just using blue notebooks, but on the inside cover again you can see we have my timetable for school, just much bigger because the B5 is a much larger size, and I also put in this little flip out so that I had my weekly reset checklist here. This meant that because it flips out to the side of the notebook, I can see it from any page in the notebook. Some other things that we stuck in here were things like the piece of paper that came with my content creator badge that released from Archer and Olive, and a little post-it from one of my colleagues when I was at school, and a sticker for a band that one of my colleagues is in. Flipping into the first page though, we started off with a quote page. So, life does not get better by chance, it gets better by change. Again, another quote that was very fitting for the time because I was looking to quit teaching, so big change for me. Also stuck in this little Minccino piece of paper that Vogel has on his kind of annual Pokemon calendar. So it's got a little page for each day of the year with the weekend shared. So this one was for July 30th and July 31st. On to the next page though. Because I hadn't used a B5 before, I thought it would be a good idea to put in a grid spacing guide. For the A5 journal, because I've used so many of those, I'm very familiar with the grid spacing that I need to divide my page up into different sections. But because the B5, not so familiar with, I thought that having that reference here would be handy. I also wanted to get a little bit better at using my key, so having in particular the note be a triangle and then list items being little circles. So I put a key in for myself, both a color code in terms of school and then a regular kind of key for just general bulleting stuff. For the decoration in this start of journal setup, we were going with a kind of rainbow color theme with this blackout paper for contrast. We have the future log, which again, the first kind of months got used fairly well and the later ones did not. I think that's like in part because I get lazy with filling it in, but also because I just don't schedule things out that far in advance. So probably don't ever need to have more than a year in my future log. We have the level 10 life check-in, so these are the different categories, we rate them out of 10. The color bar, the color doesn't actually mean anything, I just wanted to bring more of the rainbow in, but the colored bar length gives me the rating. So for instance, like personal development, I rated it a 5, and the little star is what I rated it last time. So that's with that A5 journal that we literally just flipped through. Down the bottom, I wanted to list out some mini actions that I could take to kind of improve my ratings in each of those sections, but didn't end up filling that in. We then had my goal plans for my 2 goals for the kind of quarter or the focus period that I was in. So we had the health goal and the career goal, and then each of those were broken up into kind of like, I don't know, pillars or projects. So things like batching my tasks for my content creating, scheduling, routines, that kind of stuff. On to the next page though, we had the meal cheat sheet. So this is effectively just a place to write down meals that I actually like, because anytime we come to do meal planning, I have to sit there for a really long time and be like, what do I even eat? Which is just not helpful. It's not a helpful use of time, so having this reference list, much more useful. I transferred over those monthly challenge ideas from the April page in the last journal. I probably didn't need a full page for it. I either overestimated the number of things that I was going to put on the list or just overestimated the amount of space I was going to need. Maybe both. Probably both. We have the page for the JNR book club, or rather the spread for the JNR book club. So I put down the rules for the book club, which are mainly rules for Rachel and I, some book ideas of things that I'd like to read at some point, the genres that we still had to use or the ones that we had already used. So the numbers here represent the month number as to when those got read. So for instance, historical fiction for January, horror for February, so on and so forth. And I also printed out the little book covers and put them in here, and I just thought they looked really cute. I liked that idea. That was a bit of fun. On this spread, we have my media consumed kind of section. So movies that I watched, TV shows that I watched, books and songs. And then I never ended up filling anything in the other category. It wasn't probably super necessary. We have my someday maybe list, now known as future me problems. And I actually think I started making a point to bring tasks over from previous journals rather than just kind of letting them fade into the nothingness with my previous journals and not really remembering those things that I wanted to do at some point. I need to make a better point of actually transferring those forward or migrating them into future journals. For the My Next Journal page in this journal, I actually decided to make it a full spread. So we have a space to write out things I liked or didn't like about the journal, things that I wanted to keep, scrap, change, or try, and then some other kind of ideas. And then my little thumbnails here, I gave myself space to write underneath the thumbnail what each of them were, so that I could draw in a little picture to show what I wanted the layouts to kind of look like. I think that worked quite well, so I've brought that forward into future journals. Here is that year at a glance that I was talking about before. So this one you can see is washi taped along the side so that I could remove it and put it into my future journals, so that I only had to set it up once. This one in particular was made with teaching in mind though. So any of the purple sections are school holidays. Any of the yellow were days off, sick days, personal days, that kind of thing. And anything in blue was a staff only day. But of course, I stopped teaching at the end of term 2, so I didn't need to bring this forward into my next journal. Underneath this though, because in the last one, I just had a big blank page and I thought that was kind of wasteful, I decided to put this on this page here. So we've got like my marking list, notes, special assessment conditions, the topic timelines. We have the term overview for term 2, which got much better use compared to the term 1 overview. And then rather than having a page or spread per week, which seemed a little excessive, I decided to put 4 weeks per spread. So 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all broken up so that we've got column for each of the days of the week and a row for each of the periods. I don't know if you can tell, but I had to cut a page out because I just completely stuffed up when I was drawing this one the first time. So I just removed the page and stuck down the little part that was left over. So not too shabby. We have another one here where I think I stuffed up the numbering, so I just stuck a piece of paper over the top. That's one of the things that I quite like about the Archer and Olive paper, is that because it is thicker, you can just stick stuff over the top and you can't see through it, and it's all good. We have week 9 and 10, because this was only a 10-week term, and then we had my before term 3 checklist, which I intentionally worded that way so that it didn't seem like I was leaving. Same idea with the end of term countdown, which really could have been an end of teaching countdown, but I liked the rainbow colors, it was a bit of fun. This spread here, I really had wished that I put before my teaching stuff because it's a little bit more like journal related than it is teaching related. But again, we've got the place to map out or kind of plan what I wanted each of my themes to look like. A little bit of spoilers if you haven't already seen the plan with me's for those. But we had pandas, watermelon, love is love potions, and the original bullet journal. So, pandas. This was very much outside of my comfort zone. 1, because I don't really draw animals. 2, because I don't usually use a lot of washi tape in my journal, honestly, like maybe in a corner or something like that. And 3, just because this is huge. Like, it was so big. And you'll see that a lot of the pages that I set up in the monthly setups, I made into Dutch doors. Like, I cut parts of the page away so I just didn't have to do as much decorative work or like filling stuff in. This though is the start of the projects list, and this kind of has replaced my quote pages. So for a very long time in my bullet journaling system, it would always be quote page, cover page. But now we're more so looking at projects list, cover page. So little Dutch door cutout here, which I thought was very cute. The pandas were super cute. Some of them looked a little bit interesting, but I still enjoyed doing them. We have my monthly challenge, which I did for like half the month. The actions list, which got a bit better use than previous months, which is good. We have It's Gonna Be May, because I have to have that in my May setups, otherwise it's like just breaking traditions. It's not okay. My little pandas with their little derpy tongues looking so cute. I very much enjoyed in the B5 at least that I could do these separate boxes for each of the days of the month on the monthly log, just because I had enough space to still make boxes that were big enough and space them out. We have the Jane Book Club, which I read the first chapter of the book and then DNF'd it. Things were busy in May and I just wasn't feeling it, and I didn't really fill in my reflection either. And I did hand in my resignation though, so I wrote that down as an accomplishment. Yay for me. We had my notes and tasks section, and this was mainly about the secret words that came out with my May A Month of Planning challenge, which was a lot of fun though. I really enjoyed trying to do daily videos, like I've enjoyed doing it for Vlogmas as well. The first B5 weekly setup, which I only used the one spread, I didn't do a Dutch door for this one, but I do know in subsequent weeks I did end up doing those as Dutch doors. We had a brain dump, which I did as part of my weekly reset, I'm pretty sure. And then we had a schedule for my form times, or like tutor times, or home group, whatever you guys call it. Just so I kind of knew what was going on, because term 2 was kind of crazy. The next weekly, we didn't do a Dutch door on this one, but we did have plenty of space to write things down. I think that's the thing with the B5, because it has so much space, I was really trying to get a feel for how much room I needed for things. Like, you can see this looks very full, which I personally kind of like. I like it when my weeklies look full. So lots of space to write down tasks, which is something that I very much appreciated about the B5. Homeworking wish list, so things that I wanted to get for working at home. A blank page that I didn't fill in. Ah, there we go. Here's the Dutch door. But even then, like with the Dutch door, still plenty of things written in here. I preferred the B5 for being able to write lots rather than for more decoration space. I actually found that in trying to decorate the B5, I found it super daunting, but in terms of being able to write heaps down, I loved that about it. Another Dutch door weekly. Didn't use this part, so realistically did not have to be a Dutch door at all, but it had just come off, the previous week where I had plenty of things to write down, so, it is what it is. After this one though, we are into June, and I made very sure that I wrote June on these ones rather than July, because last year I wrote July on like all of my June stuff, and it made me very upset. As mentioned though, this one was a Love is Love potions, and we were using the colours of the bisexual pride flag. I absolutely loved this setup. I thought it was absolutely flipping gorgeous. I love the colour palette, I love the leaves and the potion bottles and just all of it. It just made my soul happy, if I'm honest. So we have the June cover page. I was going to put a quote up here, I never actually got around to it, but it's all good. We had the challenge, which was about spending, I believe. And I didn't end up finishing it off, and we can see that there were certainly some spending days in the blue. But we also had a sprinkling of low spend or no spend days, so that was good too. The actions list, so started filling that in. I had a tracking section down here, but I didn't actually use it. The J&R book club, so our book for the month was Becoming by Michelle Obama, which I got a good chunk of the way through, like over half, but I didn't end up finishing that one either. It wasn't really my vibe, which I'm actually okay with, like, not finishing books, because life is too short to do things you don't want to do effectively. But also the reason that we undertook this book club challenge was that we were wanting to explore different genres. So autobiography, I now know, is a genre that I'm not as keen on compared to other ones, or at least this book in particular in that category I wasn't as keen on. June in review, so getting sick, low motivation and report writing. Yep, sounds like not my kind of party. The notes space I didn't end up using, but it's all good. And then we have the weeklies. I was really excited about this one. I was going to do my journaling here, because I was doing a journaling challenge at that time, so I gave myself space to fill it in. And then flu. Hella flu, rip me. Flu easing, but almost fainted in the shower. Like, I was apocalyptically unwell, so it just didn't really get used. Project list, don't die of the flu. That kind of stuff. I tried to make the layout a bit more simple the week after that, and you can see it got pretty good use at the start of the week, and then towards the end of the week I kind of fell off with it, but I did quite like this layout, even though it was super simple stuff. And then after this, I decided that I wanted to put in a steps tracker, probably related to one of my goals, but then I only filled in at least this section for the number of steps. I only filled in the graph up to here because I started making, errors on it, and I just got fed up with it. This was just like a little reports writing list for myself. We've got some more weeklies. This one was a Dutch door one, but like a folded Dutch door. And this is where I got into actually making sure I was tracking my meals again. This one I decided to do on my weekly spreads so that I'd be a little bit more inclined to actually fill it in rather than trying to fill in a monthly layout. Just because a lot of the time with my monthly layouts, I'll get to like mid-month or maybe the last kind of third of the month and I'll just fall away with filling things in. If it's on my weekly, it's right in front of my face, so I'm a lot more likely to actually get that stuff done. After that one though, we have another weekly spread with a Dutch door. We've got the meal log here again, little event section, projects. I liked all of these little decorations. I just thought they were very pretty. I started bringing more decoration into my weekly spreads in this year, I feel. Like, just little small decorative elements, but just things that help the weeklies tie a little bit more nicely with the start of month setup, so that they kind of all look cohesive. Another little Dutch door, but a folded one. Got some meal plan, meal log. So I was finding that because I didn't have a plan, I was just kind of eating whatever I wanted, so I tried to make a plan for it. Didn't necessarily work out. And then we have July, which I have another beautiful, vibrant color palette for. The funny thing about this is just like, I had a real hankering to do a watermelon theme, and for all of my themes for the year, my patrons voted on them, so I was very happy that they voted for the one that I was kind of a bit more keen on. But July for me is in the middle of winter, like it is not watermelon season where I live. I just really wanted to do it for some reason. But I absolutely love this setup. I thought that these little like cut out tabs, but in the letters for July were super cute. So we have the projects list, we have the cover page for J, and then we have, beautiful. I just love the combination of the green and the pink, and then like the black and white with the contrast. It just makes me happy. Flipping on forward, we had the monthly challenge. And the idea was that I was going to colour it in a dark pink colour if I had done it, so I coloured everything in light pink to start with, just to make it a little easier for myself, and then I could go over the top of any of those with the darker pink colour to say that I did do the thing. I don't even remember picking a challenge for this month. This might have been one of the months I didn't have a challenge. I did make good use of my actions list though, even though things didn't necessarily get done. At least I populated it, and thus it was much more likely to get done. We have the meal planner, and then I had a little key down the bottom here to say whether I did eat it as planned or made something else or whatnot. Mainly because a lot of the time I feel like I plan out my meals, but I then don't necessarily eat what I planned to eat. So I was trying to keep a bit better track of that. I had my steps tracker, I filled in the first 2 days, and then I abandoned it. And that's alright. I think that it's one of those things that sometimes these trackers work really well for me, and that's why I put them in, because I think that, you know, it's something that I might need for the month. And sometimes they just don't get filled in. I didn't need them. There might have been something else going on. Maybe I decided that it just wasn't the right season for me to track my steps. And I am totally okay with that. We had a July in review. I'm still bummed about not filling these ones in though. Like, it would be nice to be able to look back on these review pages, and I think that's something I'm going to focus on in the year ahead. We had the note section. This one in particular bothered me because this O looks like a 0 rather than the letter O, because it's just a little too squashed. So I remember every time I came back to look at this one, I was just like, grrr. Here we go. We have the book club book, which I did actually finish reading. I just didn't end up putting seeds on these. But this was like, what, a 70-something chapter book? And so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Yep, a 70 chapter book. And I read it and I was proud of myself. We had my term checklist, or effectively like before I leave school checklist, because this was the last month that I was at school, I'm pretty sure. We had the month of planning challenge, which I didn't end up writing the statistics down, and I still think it probably would have been valuable, but it's okay, I don't mind. Organizing the flat with my mum and dad so that my brother could move in, so it's effectively just planning their trip over to Wellington and what we were going to do on each of the days. And then we're into the weeklies. More Dutch doors and more of the little decorative bits that kind of tie it to the monthly theme, bringing in the color palette, that kind of stuff. I enjoyed having the habit tracking on my weeklies, but I'm also glad that in January I'm trying to do it monthly again, because I like to change things up, I like to try new things, I like to bring back old favorites every now and again. I find that if I don't change things up in my journal, I just start to get bored, effectively. And if I get bored with my journal, I don't use my journal. And not using my journal isn't really the business. This little tick box up here though was for me to tick off once everything on this like spread or layout had been like dealt with, I guess you could say. So it had been moved forward if it needed to be moved forward, it was scrapped if it needed to be scrapped, all of that kind of thing. Another weekly with all of the beautiful watermelon colours. I also used some paper from one of my Arch and Olive notepads on this one too. And then I was trying my hand at just daily logging, it seems. And I was getting really into that because I think at the time I was reading the bullet journal method. So I wanted to go back and try dailies again, which meant that when we got into August, I decided to go full original bullet journal method. Here are my notes from reading the bullet journal method, and I just went very simple with it, using the kind of color palette that that book has with the black and the yellow, and I like looking through these notes. See, this is the kind of stuff that I like the B5 for. I like being able to just take all this stuff down, and have it all in one place. That makes me happy. This looks very nice to me. So we took down all of those notes and then we were into August. So because I was trying the original bullet journal method, or kind of like going back to basics, I guess you could say, I decided not to put in a cover page or a quote or anything like that. Instead, we just have the calendar as that regular kind of list view that you can find in the original bullet journal method. My monthly challenge for August was daily logging, and you can see I kind of just filled it in the side here, so yellow meant it got done and black meant that it didn't. We have a task list for the month, which is effectively my projects list. And then we have my actions list, which I did not fill in at all, and thus it did not get done. We have my trackers, so my habit tracker and my steps tracker, which varied success in terms of completion there. It has a little key down the bottom to represent what each of my icons mean, which is cool too. And then we're into the daily logs. I loved this. This worked very well for me, and it's something that I totally want to bring back and incorporate into my journal some more. Again, we've got those little tick boxes to just check off to say things have been transferred when they got transferred or migrated or whatnot. It doesn't look so special, but I think there's just something very satisfying with a full page of things being written in, and they don't even need to be all checked off. Like, you know, a lot of these got pushed forward, like everything on this list pretty much got pushed forward, because I think this day in particular, I was pulling everything out of here into one list, so I had it all in one place. But I love this. I know I already said that, but I really, really do. We were getting towards the end of August though, and towards the end of this journal, and although there was possibly enough space for the next month, I just decided that I was done with the B5. For the next month, I wanted to do something decorative again, but I found the B5 size was really intimidating in terms of decoration. So we have the August reflection, which I actually filled in. This pleases me. I'm glad I filled it in. I filled this one in as part of my monthly reset video, I'm pretty sure, and I think that kind of motivated me more to get it filled in. We have some layouts that I did on a video about putting like everything on the one spread, effectively. So it's like a 1-page full monthly setup. So you've got your calendar, your notes, your expenses, your habit tracking, your weekly kind of actions, tasks, mood tracker, just like all the stuff. Same idea with this kind of one, but slightly different layout. And then just some blank pages, which I will probably end up using at some point for things like, I don't know, maybe some more note taking, maybe scrap paper. Maybe if I have a video where I want to do some more B5 layouts, I'll put them in here. And then after that one, we have some practice or testing page for my September theme. Spoilers, unless you've already seen it, of course. Things that I might want to put on a weekly dashboard, some kind of notes about when my brother and mum were coming. And then we've just got like random lists. I was just putting kind of like what I was calling micro collections in the back here. So just stuff that needed to be done. And then we've got my obligatory pen testing page where I just scribble a whole bunch of stuff. As mentioned, although I found the B5 quite intimidating, I did also like the challenge. Although decorative layouts in the B5 were not really for me, I kind of preferred a more minimalist approach. I absolutely loved writing down daily logs, and I really loved taking notes in this journal. Having the extra space to do that and then getting these full pages of text was just really spoke to me. I did find it interesting though that in the notebook that had plenty of space to do decorative elements and still record lots of daily notes and things like that, I was a bit more apprehensive about doing that decoration. You saw I cut away a lot of the pages so I didn't have to fill them with as much decoration. After the B5 though, I decided to challenge myself yet again, and in particular quite a big challenge because I ended up moving into a B6. As you can see, the B6 is much smaller than the B5. It's like actually half the size of the B5. But in this journal, I actually found I was more inclined to do decoration because it was smaller and less intimidating. But there wasn't as much space to then put notes in, so it was kind of a hard balancing act on that front. In terms of that B6 notebook though, this is another Archer and Olive one with the little firefly design. And on the inside cover here, I didn't have a timetable for school because it's no longer teaching. If we scoot this guy over, you can see I have another little flip out with my weekly reset checklist, so I can see it from any page in the journal because it hangs out the side. And I also have these little, I guess you could say, tip-ins of my content creator friends from the design team at Archer and Olive. I bought their badges as well, so I just stuck these in because I thought it was kind of a cute little piece of memorabilia from our time together on the team. Nameplate page, and then on our first page here we have another quote: "If love was a storybook, we would meet on the very first page." I thought it was kind of cute because the first page of the journal and it's a quote about being on the first page. Yeah, I feel like that was not lost on anybody. But for this start of journal setup, I was doing kind of a scrapbooky thing, so I had a lot of different scrapbook papers and washi tapes. I really loved this setup. I made pretty good use of this part of my future log, because this is just the first, 6 months, I guess. Well, this journal started in September, so it's really October and then the 6 months that follow from the start of October. Yeah, anywho. But I also put in a future log, and I have not used it at all because I just don't have any events that are that far out. So that's something to keep in mind for future journals, though I think I did put in a full year in my my current 2023 journal, but that's okay. Flipping over, we have my place to write down weekly routines and kind of monthly routines. So things that I want to do on each day of the week and things that I want to do once a month. I wasn't very good about coming back and checking either of these pages though. I like the idea of them, I just think they actually need a bit more thought before I populate them. So something to think about, but I really loved these little washi tape stickers and just the entire color palette is just really pretty. I've been really into that kind of like vintage romantic kind of color palette aesthetic type thing recently, which is not something that I typically gravitate towards. We have the level 10 life, which we have the little kind of bar tracker for again, but on this one I didn't mark in what my ratings were last time that I did it. Another little quote page. In this one I used a lot of quote pages to kind of fill space so that then the pages that came after it could be where I wanted them to be. So for instance, this one is supposed to be a kind of brainstorm and action list for this goal in particular, and because I wanted it on a full spread, I didn't want to start this part here. So I filled this page with a quote page. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Not that I actually ended up using this part of it, but that's okay. I've done a lot of this type of stuff for my goals for next year in my brainstorming book, because I found that if I'm putting stuff into my bullet journal, I get kind of precious about it. I'm not gonna lie, and I'm not really that fussed about being precious either. I like things to be neat because I'm much more likely to actually use them if they look good from my point of view. But when it comes to goal setting is often messy, so having it in my brainstorming book and then transferring it over into my journal is probably a better way to go. On this spread though, we have my media consumed and things to check out. I like the idea of having these together because typically the things to check out are media, so it just kind of made sense in my mind. And then after this one was supposed to be for the book club books, but I haven't printed out their covers. I do technically still have time to do that. I'm not sure if I'm going to though, because my printer low-key kind of sucks. The book covers that I printed in the last journal, I printed on a different printer, and my current printer, not so great. Another quote page to kind of fill space, but I do like them. I think they're very pretty. I really liked being decorative in this journal. Something that I was trying in this journal was having monthly content calendars, so I knew what was going out when across all of my different social media platforms that I actually post on. I very much like the idea of these. I found the calendar a little hard to use because it was a fair bit smaller than I'm accustomed to, but I have brought this idea into my next bullet journal, which is an A5, so the boxes are a little bit bigger. Didn't fill in December's one because December is a little bit crazy in terms of the content that I was putting out. But after this we have my Future Me Problems, the first edition of the Future Me Problems list. I did this one on a little Dutch door so that I had plenty of space, not that I necessarily needed it, but this is effectively what has replaced my Someday Maybe list. Not any kind of different in terms of its overall function or structure, just different in terms of its name. On this page we have my next bullet journal spread, so the things that I wanted to include, things that were working or not working, so for instance like decorations and goal overviews that I was doing, those ones I liked, but the lack of space and having the same weekly every week, which you'll see when we flip forward, that didn't speak to me quite so much. I didn't so much use the thumbnails because I ended up doing this in my brainstorming book as well, because I was being a little messy with it. And then after this we have those swatch pages that I like to include in pretty much all of my everyday bullet journals. So our themes were September, fireflies, October, witches and witchcraft, November was sunflowers, and then December, I didn't end up writing it in, but it was Christmas village / advent calendar. As mentioned before, when I start to get towards the end of a journal, I'm like a lot less likely to fill things in, and especially when I'm getting to a journal that's finishing at the end of the year. Motivation to get stuff filled in just like so. September's theme though was fireflies, and I absolutely loved this setup. I loved the blue and the yellow together. I thought the fireflies were so stinking cute. I was just really super proud of myself for this kind of like blue wave that we have going across the pages. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. I still think it's absolutely gorgeous. You know, I'm just gonna toot my own horn here. I really like this. We have the monthly log, again with that kind of small, compact looking calendar. I think that the B6 was excellent because I really liked the decorative side of things. Like, I felt very comfortable doing decoration in this because it's only very small amount of area. So to do this decoration, like, it was time consuming because it was outside of my comfort zone kind of a thing, but because the decoration itself was smaller, it meant that it didn't take as much time as it would have compared to like an A5 or a B5 or something. I think my monthly challenge was to read daily, which I read, what, four days of the month? Whoops. But I still like the tracker, I think that's cute. We've got the actions list. We've got my tracker for the book club book. I did get further than just 3 chapters. I read like half of this book, but September was a weird month. I don't even remember what was going on, but September was a weird month. We have gratitude log, good. We have my energy tracker, which was a new addition because I was trying to pay attention to my energy cycles. So like, are there particular points in the week where my energy is really low? Are there particular points in the day where I'm very high or very low energy? Just so that you can kind of play into those energy cycles and get your high energy tasks done at the times where you are more naturally higher in energy. I have my September in review, which I actually filled in. Yes! And this is why I want to keep going with them because I really love these. Really, really enjoy them. And then we've got the weekly logs. And the weekly logs for this journal were effectively all the same in each month. The structure that we used for September was a little section for each day of the week on the side here, a little space for meal planning down the bottom here, my habit tracker, priorities, and then just daily logs after that. And then I also had on the back here a little weekly reflection. This was some washi tape that I got from the washi tape shop and I thought it was cute, so I stuck it in. Even though it's absolutely nothing to do with the Fireflies theme. It's like Halloween washi, but we've got the same idea on this one too. So the little Dutch door, same sections, pretty good use. And then filling in these weekly reflections I found to be really valuable, and that's something that I want to take forward into my next journal as well. So just like wins, challenges, improvements, and then things that were or weren't working for my bullet journal. I find that if you actually do this reflection on a semi-regular basis and pay attention to it, you can then take those points forward and just slowly make improvements, which is good. More weekly doing, more weekly reflection. Yeah. How to fix my neglected planner. Check in with my energy alarm, because I set myself an energy alarm to actually, check in with my tracker. So I figured if I bundled that up with checking in with my planner in general, it would be a good idea. I do very much like how these all turned out, even though I did end up getting bored with them. It's one of those things of like balancing my need for newness with something that actually kind of works for me. So like, towards the end of the month, I was just not really filling things in as much because I was just getting a little bit tired of doing the same over and over again, but still valuable. Got some post-it notes here that I have collected. I should probably put those somewhere more secure. I'll put them away later. And then we're into October, which see, this is the thing. I absolutely loved like all of the themes that I did in this journal because I could be more decorative, because it was less intimidating. I actually ended up using this style of decoration or this theme in my start of journal setup for my yearly collections journal in 2023. But we've got the projects list here with that little kind of like side panel decoration and our October cover page. I made really good use of my Calero Finetech gold watercolor, and I really loved how well the gold paint matched the kind of gold on the washi tape. I hope you can see how beautifully shiny it is, because it is absolutely gorgeous. I love this washi tape and I love that paint. Flipping over, we've got the monthly log, which is just a little calendar view again, as per usual. This guy here is actually a sticky note. I didn't draw the moon myself, I'm not that hardcore. Filled in the spare boxes on the calendar with that washi tape as well. It was just kind of like simple and pretty. Like, I say simple, it was time consuming, but the actual process of drawing the stuff out was fairly simple. My actions list and my review, which on my review this month I only did wins and challenges, it seems. I didn't take any other notes down at the end. And then I guess no, I actually did keep those weekly logs pretty much the same. So the same structure that I had in September, just with a little bit of extra decoration from the washi tape, because that just made for really simple decoration, so I could put that onto the pages very easily. But flipping through those ones, because I mean they're all the same, so you see the structure once and you kind of get it, or in this case you see it many times over. I didn't fill out my reflection for this week, and that's probably because we're getting in towards the end of the month kind of thing, so like didn't fill in my meal planner either. I was also away at some point here. I think I was away like here actually, because I was in Melbourne seeing my family, so that's probably in part why some of this stuff just didn't get filled in. And then after that, we have the reflection space, which also didn't get filled in with a blue sticky note. And then we were into some project planning. So because I wanted to do Vlogmas, and I've been planning for a while that I wanted to do Vlogmas, knowing what I needed to get done and like all of the different parts of it getting done, having all that written down was very important to me. So I made these 2 spreads to help myself plan that stuff out. The intention originally was to have more vlogs going out as well, but that didn't happen. And then we're into December. But you might be saying, Jess, where is November? You specifically specified that November had a sunflowers theme. Because this journal is not only smaller in terms of like, page dimensions, it actually just has less pages in general. It meant that I wasn't going to be able to fit 2 months in this notebook come the end of October. So I was very much weighing up, do I want December in here or do I want November in here? I decided for November instead to do a digital bullet journal trial. So I made a digital bullet journal in Notion, which I do also sell. We've got a separate video on that one. I mean, technically we've got videos for all of the layouts that I've shown you today. I appreciated trying the digital notebook system. I know that I'm much more inclined to use paper though, and I also got really sick in November, so I just didn't end up using the journal much at all. But jumping back to December, here we have the kind of Christmas Village Advent calendar theme. So for the Advent calendar part, I just have all of these little tip-in doors that I could write different tasks under. So this effectively is kind of like a combination of my projects list and the cover page. I just kind of spread it all out the whole way across. We've got these cute little stickers from the washi tape shop, which dictated the color palette for the month. And then I decided for the entire of December, rather than having a whole bunch of monthly pages set up, I was just gonna do dailies. So we've got 4 days per page with the little stickers and the little tip-ins to write some memories under. So like, started watching Wednesday with Rachel, or start a new playthrough of The Quarry, that kind of stuff. Some of the memories are a little bit more personal, so we will not be flipping up all of the little doors, but it's kind of cute. You can see this one, it says, I stuffed up Vogel's Quarry playthrough. So, whoops, sorry Vogel. But because we aren't actually at the end of December yet, not all of these are filled in, though there are some days that have passed that didn't really get filled in either. Like, we didn't have as much to write down on the Tuesday or the Thursday. And that's not to say that I wasn't busy, it's just that I didn't write stuff down. I loved these stickers though. I actually really love the stickers from the washi tape shop because they kind of blend in with the page quite well, I feel. Like a little snowman and a little penguin. Super, super cute. So I still have some days to use up on this one. We've got Christmas Day, we've got the 28th. And then because there is not an even number of days, or not a multiple of 4 for December, it meant that for the 31st, I just gave it a full page to itself. I do technically have 2 free spreads after this. I was going to use them for a kind of year in review. I'm not too sure at this stage. And then I just have some lists in the back, just like my last journal. Trying out the B6 was a lot of fun. As mentioned, I loved being more decorative in this one, but I did very much miss having space to kind of just write things. I very much liked the B5 for being able to write as much as I could. So I really do feel that the A5 is kind of like a happy medium for me. It is still very much my preferred size of journal. I suppose it does have the unfair advantage in that I've used it the most. Like, I have at least 16 journals having been done in an A5 size. But it was cool to try some new things this year in terms of the size of the journal, or the type of journal in terms of that digital planning. And I'm looking forward to continuing those trials in the new year. But after I use an A5 first. Then we'll try other things. If you were looking for even more bullet journal flip throughs, I do have a complete playlist of all of my previous flip through videos. Or if you wanted to look at any of the monthly setup videos that we had from the layouts I showed you today, the playlist at the bottom is where it's at. Click or tap on either of those and I'll see you over there.